I am going to talk to you the way I would talk to a grandson who is smart, hardworking, and still getting pushed around by modern spending. The world is designed to separate you from your income. It is not personal. It is a business model. Every algorithm wants a slice of you, and the slices add up. You fight back by putting your money on rails. Once the rails are built, your future improves without constant effort. So let me hand you the rails. I have spent most of my life trying to make decisions the simple long-term way in Omaha, and later at Berkshire Hathaway, I learned that the best results usually come from ordinary actions repeated for a very long time. Personal finance works the same way. You do not need a perfect forecast. You need a durable system. If you remember nothing else, remember this next piece. The numbers are not magic, but the order is you will split your take-home income into 4 buckets. 25% goes to growth ownership assets. 15% goes to stability and safety. 50% covers your true needs. 10% is guilt-free rewards and life. If you do not hit the percentages perfectly on day one, do not quit. Start where you are and move toward the targets. The power comes from doing it automatically month after month. Why these numbers? Because wealth is built when you own productive assets and you keep enough margin of safety to stay in the game. At the same time, you need a life you can enjoy and cost you can sustain. This plan forces you to do all 4. It makes you an investor, a planner, a manager, and a human being all at once. If you are thinking, that sounds tight. Good tight is not the same as impossible. Tight is how you stop drifting. Tight is how you build room later. And as your income rises, these percentages create leverage. The plan scales up with you without changing its logic. If you remember nothing else, remember this next piece. Another quick win is to control your environment. Unsubscribe from marketing emails, remove shopping apps, turn off notifications that tempt you. It sounds small, but it reduces the number of times your brain is asked to resist. Now, let me show you how to install this system in real life, because ideas without installation become entertainment. The easiest way is to build separate accounts or separate buckets inside one budgeting app. You want physical separation, not just mental separation. When you set up transfers, name the accounts like they are rules. Ownership and safety are better labels than savings. Names shape behavior. Make the transfers automatic and hide the accounts from your daily spending view if you can. If you have irregular expenses, create sinking funds inside the stability bucket. Car repairs, annual bills, travel, school costs. You can fund them slowly each month so the payment does not feel like a punch when it arrives. Then do one monthly meeting with yourself. 10 minutes. Look at what happened. Adjust the percentages if your income shifted. Cancel one leak. You are not trying to be perfect. You are trying to improve the system one small step at a time. If you are married or sharing finances, do this as a team. Money problems are rarely math problems. They are communication problems. A simple shared plan reduces arguments because both people know what the money is doing. Start with one decision. The day your income lands, the splits happen. Do not wait until the end of the month. The end of the month is when money is gone, so set automatic transfers on payday or the next business day into the growth and stability buckets first. Finally, tie the plan to a purpose. Do you want options? Do you want to retire earlier? Do you want to stop feeling anxious? Do you want to help family? Numbers stick when they serve a story. Give the system a reason to exist? Let me make the math easy. If you take home $4,000 a month, then 25% is $1,000, 15% is $600, 50% is $2,000, 10% is $400. If your income is $2,000, step 1 is to find your take-home income average. Look at the last 3 months and calculate the typical amount that arrives. Use that as your starting number. Then multiply it by the percentages. That gives you a target amount for each bucket. If you want a quick win, do an audit of recurring charges today. You do not need to remember them. Your bank statement remembers them for you. Cancel anything you would not buy again today. That alone can free enough to start the growth bucket. If your needs are currently higher than 50%, that does not mean you are doomed. It means you temporarily shift. You might start with 10% growth, 5% stability, and work toward the full targets. The important part is that ownership and safety are not zero. 0 is the dangerous number. If you remember nothing else, remember this next piece. That person does not become wealthy overnight. But after 5 years of consistent ownership contributions, they own a meaningful stake in the market. They have a reserve that prevents debt. They also have a lifestyle they can maintain. They have moved from fragile to resilient. And resilience is the first stage of wealth. And imagine someone starting from a hard place, taking home $1,500 a month. Maybe they cannot hit the full numbers. Fine. They start with a small ownership transfer, even $50 a week, and a small safety transfer, even $25. The point is to start the pattern. Patterns grow. Or consider a couple with kids who feels constantly behind. Often their problem is not that they do not care. It is that their money has no rails. When they install rails, the anxiety drops because they can see progress every month. Progress reduces stress even before the final goal is reached. In every case, the plan does 3 things. It builds assets, it builds reserves, and it prevents lifestyle. That is why I like it. It is not fancy. It is protective. Let me give you a few examples, because examples make the plan feel real. Imagine someone earning the equivalent of $50,000 a year and taking home about $3,000 a month. Under this system, about $750 goes into ownership, $450 into safety, $1,500 into needs, and $300 into rewards. Here is another example that matters. A young person who wants to buy a home someday. If they build the safety bucket and a separate down payment sinking fund, they create a path. If they do not, they are forced to rely on perfect timing, perfect markets, and perfect luck. I do not like plans that depend on luck. Now, here is the part most people skip. Another objection is, I cannot invest until I pay off debt. Debt matters, but waiting can become an excuse. Start small, build the habit, put out the high-interest fire, but do not let the habit of ownership stay at 0 for years. I can already hear the objection. What if my needs are 70%? Then you have a signal. Your structure is heavy. Sometimes the solution is income. Sometimes the solution is housing. Sometimes it is transportation. Often it is a combination. But the plan gives you a target to aim at instead of vague guilt. And some people say, what if the market crashes? Markets will crash. That is normal. I have lived through many. The question is whether you will have the emotional and financial strength to stay invested when it happens. Your stability bucket is part of that strength. The last objection is emotional. I feel like I am missing out. You are missing out on temporary consumption so you can own your future. The goal is not to impress strangers. The goal is to become free enough that strangers cannot control your choices. Some people say, I tried budgeting and I failed. Most people did. Budgeting fails when it is based on memory and discipline. This plan succeeds when it is based on automation and clear buckets. You are not remembering, you are routing. Now, let's start with the 25% bucket, because this is where ownership begins. Avoid business models where your profit depends on looking rich. That is the old trap of spending to impress. Real business does not require you to pretend. Real business requires you to solve a problem that people already pay to solve. The goal is not to do everything. The goal is to build a portfolio of ownership, a stream of automatic investment, and a career that steadily becomes more valuable. When those two grow together, your financial pressure starts to fall. When markets fall, you are not being punished. You are being offered future returns at a better price. The only people who truly get hurt are those who panic and sell. That is why the stability bucket exists. It keeps you from panic selling your growth assets. If you have access to a retirement plan at work, use it. Automate contributions so the money leaves before you can spend it. If your employer matches, treat that match like a raise you only get if you show up for yourself. Now, the 25% bucket is also where you invest in becoming more valuable. If you want to raise your income, you must raise the value you create. A course that gives you a skill that the market pays for, a certification, a tool that lets you do higher quality work. Those can be ownership investments too, as long as they produce future cash flow. The 25% bucket should be protected from lifestyle upgrades. That new phone, the nicer car, the bigger apartment. Those often show up right when your income rises. Treat income increases like a chance to buy more ownership, not a chance to raise your fixed costs. Rebalancing once or twice a year is enough for most people. The goal is to keep your risk roughly in line with your time horizon, not to chase whatever is popular this week. And remember, the best investment you can make early on is in your earning power. A skill that increases your income can behave like a high-return asset because it expands the dollars you can put into the other buckets. Be careful with side hustles that look glamorous but do not produce durable value. A real side business is one where you can explain in one sentence how it makes money and why customers will still pay next year. If it depends entirely on trends and constant posting, it might be entertainment. Not a business. Do not let the news assign you an identity. The news will tell you to be afraid, then excited, then afraid again. If you build your plan on news, your plan will change weekly. If you build your plan on percentages and automation, your plan will survive decades. If you are young, your greatest asset is time. That means you can afford more volatility because you can wait. As you get older, you can add more stability, but do not let fear push you entirely into low-growth assets too early. If you want to invest like a grown-up, you must decide on rules before you are emotional. A simple rule is a fixed percentage every payday, invested the same way each time. That is dollar cost averaging. It is boring, and boring is beautiful when compounding is the goal. What you do not want is a pile of random bets, high fees, and constant switching. Fees are quiet but relentless. A 1% fee sounds small over decades. It can consume a shocking portion of your results. Zone helpful trick is to treat this bucket like a bill that must be paid. When people tell me they cannot invest, I often find they are investing in someone else's business through interest and fees. Credit card interest is an investment you are making for the bank. I would rather you invest for yourself. I am not asking you to guess the next NVIDIA. Most people lose money trying to be clever. I have done well by being patient and by owning great businesses for a long time. For most people, the simplest way to own a broad slice of business is a low-cost index fund that tracks a large market held for decades. Let's start with the 25% bucket, because this is the bucket that changes your identity. This is where you become an owner. Not someday today. Growth means assets that can grow faster than inflation over long periods. In plain English, that means businesses, which usually means stocks and sometimes real estate exposure through funds. The core principle is ownership. You want to own assets that can increase in value or produce cash flow. You do not want to rent your own life back from other people forever. If you are paid irregularly, you can still run this plan. Treat every payment the same. The moment money arrives, you split it into the buckets. Irregular income needs systems even more than stable income. The big idea is ownership. When you own a piece of productive assets, you do not have to work for every dollar. When you do not own assets, you must work for every dollar. I want you to slowly move from the second world into the first. If you want a simple test of whether something is an investment in earning power, ask, will this still produce value 1 year from now? A skill usually will. A flashy purchase usually will not. You want purchases that keep paying you back. If you insist on owning individual companies, keep it small and keep it honest. Do it with money you can afford to lose after your system is already running. But do not confuse a few lucky picks with a repeatable process. Most repeatable processes look plain. A practical sequence many people follow is this. First, build the habit with a broad market index. Then, if you want, add a small slice of a growth index, then maybe a small slice of dividend-focused holdings. The sequence matters because it keeps you diversified while you learn. If you do not have a workplace plan, you can still build the habit through whatever retirement or investment accounts exist in your country. The label changes, the principle does not. You want automatic transfers into diversified ownership assets. You do not need 20 holdings to be diversified. You need exposure to many businesses at low cost. A broad index fund does that in one purchase. Once you have that, your main job is staying invested, not constantly tinkering. If you need a concrete starting point, one simple approach is to keep most of your growth money in a broad market index and a smaller slice in a growth-oriented index. Some people also like a small slice in dividend-focused funds. The exact mix matters far less than the habit and the cost. Now, here is the part most people skip. There is a reason I like automation so much. It removes emotion. When the market is down, your feelings will tell you to stop investing. Automation keeps you buying when prices are lower, which is exactly when ownership is on sale. The same is true in personal budgeting. If your plan depends on feeling disciplined every day, it will fail. If your plan depends on a few automatic transfers and clear boundaries, it can survive stress. So, whenever you can, make the right move, the default move. That is how you win without heroics. Here is how I would explain it at the kitchen table. People often ask me about renting versus owning. I do not think there is one answer for everyone, but I do think you should understand the trade. Rent is a payment that ends. Ownership is a payment that can build equity. If you can buy a modest place and keep the total cost reasonable, ownership can be a powerful forced savings plan. But do not buy a house that makes you house poor. A house is not a trophy, it is a tool. The moment it destroys your ability to invest and save, it stops being a tool and becomes a weight. If you rent, be honest with yourself. Will you actually invest the difference consistently for years? If yes, renting can work. If no, you may be trading away a major wealth builder without replacing it. Next comes the 15% stability bucket, your margin of safety. Keep this money simple and boring. It should be liquid, stable, and separated from your spending account. You are not trying to get rich on this money. You are trying to stay alive financially, so your growth assets can compound. Here is what happens without it. Your car breaks, your hours get cut. A medical bill shows up, you do not have cash, so you borrow. Then the interest starts eating your future. A safety fund breaks that chain. It turns emergencies into inconveniences. Now, let's talk about the 15% bucket, because this bucket keeps you from selling your future at the worst possible time. I call it stability. You might call it emergency money, reserves, or your margin of safety. In investing, margin of safety is the difference between surviving and being forced out. In personal finance, it is the same. I like to measure the size of this fund in months, not in dollars. If your essential monthly costs are $3,000, then 5 months is $15,000. The number changes for every person. The math is the same. Where should this money live? Somewhere safe, separate, and slightly inconvenient. If it is in your main checking, it will be spent. If it is in a separate savings account, you will think twice before touching it, which is exactly what you want. This bucket also pays for opportunities. When you have cash reserves, you can say yes to a job change, a move, a course, or an investment when it appears. People with no reserves cannot take opportunities. They can only react to problems. Let me make the stability bucket concrete. Add up your essentials: rent or mortgage, utilities, groceries, minimum debt payments, insurance, and basic transport. That is your baseline. Your goal is to eventually hold about 5 months of that baseline. That is the cushion that turns a crisis into a manageable problem. If you live in a country with high inflation, stability matters even more. It is not just emergencies. Prices move, jobs change, systems change. Your reserve is your buffer against the world's unpredictability. When you use the safety fund, you refill it. You treat the refill like a priority, because the fund is what prevents small problems from turning into expensive ones. Some people like to build it in stages. First 1 month of baseline, then 3 months, then 5. Celebrate each stage, because each stage buys you a little more freedom. Freedom is often just the ability to handle a surprise without panic. A practical way to build the fund is to aim for 1 month of essential expenses first. Then build it to 3 months, then 5 months. You are stacking layers of protection. Stability also protects your relationships. Money stress creates arguments. A reserve reduces that stress, which is why this bucket is not just financial. It is emotional and relational. If you already have high-interest debt, you may split this bucket at first, build a starter emergency fund, then attack the debt, then rebuild the full reserve. The key is to avoid being one flat tire away from a credit card. One of the best modern tricks is automation. Again, set a transfer from your paycheck day into this fund. The day you are paid, you pay your future self. If you do it manually, you will negotiate with yourself. Automation ends the negotiation. Some people separate the safety bucket into two accounts: a small buffer in the checking account to prevent overdrafts, and a larger reserve in a separate savings account that is harder to touch. The separation reduces temptation. When you get a raise, do not let it disappear into lifestyle creep. Send a portion of every raise directly into the stability bucket until it is fully funded. That way your safety grows at the same time your life expands. A good rule is this: your emergency fund is for things you did not plan for. Your sinking funds are for things you did plan for. This keeps you from draining your emergency fund for routine life events. If you can earn a little interest on it in a safe savings vehicle, that is fine, but do not chase yield with your safety fund. The purpose is certainty, not excitement. I also like a second layer called sinking funds. These are small funds for predictable expenses: car repairs, annual insurance, holidays, school costs. They are not emergencies. They are expected. When you plan for expected expenses, fewer things become emergencies. You can build these funds faster by capturing small leaks. Round up transfers, cash back, small windfalls, and money you would have spent on impulse purchases. The amounts look small, but they build momentum. Then we manage the 50% needs bucket, because uncontrolled needs crush every other goal. For needs, I like the question: is this purchase solving a real problem, or is it soothing a feeling? If it is soothing a feeling, it belongs in the rewards bucket, not in needs. Classifying correctly is half the battle. If you can reduce housing costs even slightly, the effect is permanent. That money shows up every month. It can then feed your investing buckets. That is why roommates negotiating rent, refinancing when appropriate, or moving strategically can be wealth builders. Groceries are a place where planning beats willpower. Make a simple list, cook a few default meals, and avoid shopping when hungry. These are not glamorous tips. They work because they remove decision fatigue. A simple exercise is to print or list your last 3 months of spending and circle what was truly essential. Do not judge yourself. Just observe. Then decide which expenses you want to carry into the next 3 months. Your future budget is a choice, not a report card. If you are in a high-cost city, the 50% target might be hard at first. That is not a reason to give up. It is a signal that housing and transportation choices matter more than any small budgeting trick. You have to be honest about what is a need. A need keeps you healthy, housed, and able to earn. A want makes you feel upgraded. The line is not always perfect, but you will know it when you slow down and ask, would I pay for this if I were unemployed for 3 months? The needs bucket is where honesty matters most. If you call everything a need, the plan collapses. If you call nothing a need, you will feel miserable. So define needs as the costs that keep you healthy, housed, and able to earn. Everything else is optional, even if it feels important. If you want the fastest improvement, attack fixed costs. Fixed costs are rent, car payment, insurance, recurring subscriptions. Variable costs are coffee, snacks, small purchases. People love to cut coffee because it is visible. But one housing decision can equal 100 coffees. Go where the leverage is. Housing is usually the biggest lever. If your housing cost consumes most of your income, the other buckets suffocate. That is why roommates, house hacking, living a little smaller, or choosing a slightly less fashionable location can be wealth decisions, not lifestyle failures. The 50% bucket is your life support: housing, food, utilities, basic transportation, basic insurance, and necessary payments. The reason I like a hard percentage here is that needs tend to expand to fill your entire income if you let them. Remember, the purpose is not to be the cheapest person in town. The purpose is to keep your core life affordable so you can invest aggressively. That is how you buy your future back. If you have debt payments, include minimum payments as a need, but treat extra payments as part of your plan, not random. Once high-interest debt is gone, your needs bucket becomes lighter and your ownership buckets grow. Food is a need, but delivery is not a need. A habit of cooking a few simple meals, buying in bulk where it makes sense, and avoiding waste can save a surprising amount. And it usually improves health, which is another kind of wealth. Transportation is another lever. I have never seen a car impress the market. The market pays you for skills and ownership, not for leather seats. Buying reliable used vehicles, keeping them longer, and avoiding the endless upgrade cycle can free a surprising amount of capital. One question that helps is this: am I paying for convenience, or am I paying for a real improvement in my life? Convenience spending is often the most expensive kind because it repeats constantly. Subscriptions are the modern leak. $10, they feel small, but they repeat. Do a subscription audit twice a year. Cancel what you are not using. If you miss it, you can always add it back, but you will be shocked how rarely you add it back. Insurance is a need, but overpaying is optional. Shop rates periodically, raise deductibles if appropriate, and avoid paying for coverage you do not need. Small optimizations in insurance can produce big annual savings. Utilities are often negotiable through habits and providers. Lower energy usage, renegotiate internet, and question every bill that automatically renews. You do not need to be extreme. You just need to be awake. A useful rule for needs is the 7-day rule. If you think you need something new, wait 7 days. If you still need it, buy it. Most needs evaporate when you give your brain time to cool down. Phones and gadgets are a sneaky category. The device itself is not the problem. The upgrade cycle is: if you stretch upgrades from every year to every 3 or 4 years, you free cash for ownership without feeling deprived. The goal of the 50% bucket is not deprivation. It is stability. It is a life you can maintain in good times and bad. When your needs are controlled, your savings rate becomes powerful without feeling like punishment. I have also noticed that people overpay for status. Status is rented. It disappears the moment you stop paying. Real security is owned. It stays even when no one is watching. And finally, we protect the 10% rewards bucket so the plan stays livable. The 10% bucket is also a training tool. It teaches you that you can enjoy money without losing control of it. That is an important psychological shift, especially if you grew up around financial stress. One of my favorite ideas is a joy account. It is separate. When the account has money, you spend it. When it does not, you wait. This makes enjoyment automatic and boundaries automatic at the same time. If you are working hard to build wealth, small celebrations are fuel. They keep you moving. They remind you progress is happening. Just keep the celebration paid for, not financed. If you have ever been on a strict budget and then binge spent, you already understand why the rewards bucket matters. A plan with no joy is a plan that breaks. So give yourself permission to enjoy, within limits. If you have a family, you can make this a family decision. Pick what matters most. Maybe it is one good trip, instead of constant small purchases. Maybe it is a weekly ritual, instead of random impulse buys. When you choose intentionally, you feel rich even when you spend less. This bucket can also include giving. It is support for people you love and contributions to things you believe in. Giving is easiest when your finances are stable. A plan like this makes generosity sustainable instead of stressful. If you are building a family, you can turn this into shared memories, a picnic, a day trip, a small tradition. Most happiness is not purchased at luxury prices. It is purchased with attention and intention. If you have kids, the rewards bucket can teach them. You can show them how to save for something fun and then buy it guilt-free. That lesson is more valuable than most lectures about money. I have also learned that experiences age well. Objects often fade into the background. A trip, a shared moment, a hobby you love, those become part of your life story. That is why I would rather you fund experiences than chase status objects. Think of this money as guilt-free spending. It can be restaurants, hobbies, travel, gifts, experiences, a weekend with friends, or something small that reminds you why you are doing the work. The key is that it is funded. You are not borrowing for it. You are not stealing from the other buckets. Finally, we have the 10% bucket. This is the bucket that keeps the system sustainable. If you try to live with no joy, you will eventually rebel and blow up the plan. So we build joy into the plan on purpose, and we keep it contained so it does not eat the future. A good way to use this bucket is to plan 1 or 2 things that matter and ignore the rest. 1 meaningful dinner with friends can beat 10 random impulse buys. Meaningful spending feels rich. Random spending feels forgettable. So let's build a system that works even when motivation disappears. The big idea is ownership. When you own a piece of productive assets, you do not have to work for every dollar. When you do not own assets, you must work for every dollar. I want you to slowly move from the second world into the first. Some people like to build it in stages. First 1 month of baseline, then 3 months, then 5. Celebrate each stage because each stage buys you a little more freedom. Freedom is often just the ability to handle a surprise without panic. I also like a second layer called sync. These are small funds for predictable expenses, car repairs, annual insurance, holidays, school costs. They are not emergencies. They are expected. When you plan for expected expenses, fewer things become emergencies. Let me translate that into a simple habit you can run on autopilot. Let me tie this together. 25% builds ownership and growth. 15% builds resilience. 50% keeps your life running. 10% keeps your heart in the game. This is not about perfection. It is about direction. If you move in this direction for years, you will look up and your life will feel different. The world is loud. It tells you to spend now and worry later. Ownership is quiet. It pays you later for your pay. If you want to change your finances, stop trying to win every day. Just build a system that wins most days automatically. Then let time do what time does. I have seen many market cycles. I have also seen many personal cycles. The people who end up fine are not the ones with the most excitement. They are the ones with the most margin of safety and the most consistent ownership. Build those two, and you will be doing what I have always tried to do. Keep it simple, keep it rational, and let compounding work.